Now, if you move back to the 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, you'll find child slave labour everywhere, especially in Britain. Way back, poor families would sell their children into service, occasionally to be a knight's servant, travelling with him from battle to battle, others selling daughters into the service of the great houses or castles. There would be trainee cooks, chambermaids, housekeepers, etc. The young lads would be sold to be trained as landscapers, grooms, gardeners, butlers, kitchen porters, waiters, or even soldiers. Yet if it was in the factories of the 18 and early 1900s where much of the treatment was absolutely disgraceful. At a factory in Gateshead in 1888, Alfie Morn, age 7, was responsible for looking after a metal guillotine to trim thin panels of metal. He'd already lost a finger on the machine when he first started, aged 6, and far worse was to come. The engineering plant where he worked was using machinery over 20 years old, and it was used every day, so it was very prone to stop, to jam, usually jamming a sheet of expensive ultra-thin metal. Well, Alfie was called for and he raced over to find 2 sheets on top of each other, stopping the guillotine process. What he didn't see was his boss standing at the other side of the machine as the youngster gently tried to shake the wedged metal free. The frustrated manager was losing money every second that the line was halted. So he reached for a hammer to knock the 2 sheets out of the mouth of the machine. Well, this caused the machine to move from 0 to travelling at about 20 miles an hour, sending 2 sheets flying at the young boy. They hit his arms first, amputating them. Then they went right through his chest, as poor little Alfie fell into 4 pieces. The manager was never prosecuted. Instead, he paid Alfie's parents 21 guineas as compensation for the terrible accident. 4 months later, Alfie's older brother, Stanley, aged 11, was in the storage warehouse when a wooden first floor, overburdened with metal, just crashed down on top of him. No one saw it happen, and as literally tons of metal lay there, no one resituated it. Instead, they just used it from where it lay. Months later, on getting to the very bottom of that heap, they found the totally flattened dead body of the young lad, half-eaten by rats. Out of the estimated child workforce of 755 that grafted there for almost 19 years, 298 were killed. An additional 129 were maimed for life after losing their limbs. The work itself was bad enough, but quite often the foremen were cruel and used torture to get the jobs done. Around 1850, the Parliamentary Committee visited all of the factories and found unthinkable conditions and the kind of treatment that would not be inflicted upon criminals. One factory on the Scotwood area of Newcastle was losing money, mostly due to the owner's gambling, but the foremen were told to nail the ears of every working lad there over 10 years old, nail them to the wall to encourage them to work harder. At the same factory, any of the young girls who could not pump out the right number of pots would be raped by their foreman. These were girls aged 5 to 13, and they would not complain, as in many cases their wage was the only one going into their home. In the pits, children were used at every level, boys and girls as young as 8, working 12-hour shifts, hauling coal through the narrow workings. In an attempt to stay cool, many would strip to the waist, and due to this there were many child rapes down there, male and female, never reported. Alison Hall of Leamington worked down the pit for 4 years and then fell pregnant aged 12. When the owner asked who had raped her, as they sought to find the father of the baby, to their surprise she said, "They all raped me. At least 2 of them would stick me every day." She then gave over 30 names of grown men who had taken her against her will during a time down the pit. And finally the inquiry found that she was a whore of no self-respect and that none of the men were guilty. The owner could afford to lose an 8-year-old girl, but not 2 shifts of experienced minors. Alison was told by the pit manager of a woman in Throckley who could get rid of her problem, and an abortion was carried out using a bent knitting needle. The baby died. Alison caught an infection and died 3 weeks later. She was buried in the cemetery in Leamington without a headstone. Yet at a factory unit under the bypass that crosses the Tyne at Scottswood, there's a company suffering the after effects of a previous firm. Brown's was a factory making furniture. It had about a third of its labour aged between 7 and 13. They did all the unskilled work, the sweeping up, the polishing, the finished furniture, adding wax, the screwing on of handles. Most of the men who worked there were thoroughly decent, except for the man who was second in command. His name was Bob Chipchase, and he was the authoritative right arm to a boss who was never there. This meant he could do what he liked without fear of any recriminations. Stories abounded of him raping some of the young girls, and he'd certainly tortured the young boys. His favourite trick was to stub out his cigar on people, once causing a 7-year-old boy called Little to lose an eye. This factory had operated there for about 16 years, and despite outrageous treatment of its staff, nobody dared to complain. Chipchase had been known to bring thugs to people's homes to sort them out. And on one occasion, a family of 8 were burned to death. So most thought it wise to take the brutality rather than risk death. That is, until the 24th of October, 1827. When the owner, Thomas Brown, visited his own factory. On arriving, a lawyer and 3 women entered the factory and demanded that Brown speak with them immediately. Watching this, Chipchase was panicking, as he'd run the factory pretty much single-handed. What could Brown tell them? A girl aged 17 called Margaret Farrow was up there talking about how Chipchase had raped and tortured her. How 4 years earlier she'd fallen pregnant. His answer to this was to spend 40 minutes trying to kick the child out of her. He succeeded in killing the baby, although she ended up going full term and delivering a long dead and decaying child. A woman with her, a nurse sent by the coroner's office, had the remains of that child in a box as evidence. Brown was stunned at what he was hearing about his own company. He thought he ran a good-natured and kindly firm and claimed that he had great regard for his fine workforce. He walked out onto the gantry above the factory floor, gathered the entire staff, and told them what was happening. And Brown says, "No matter what you say, your jobs are safe, but I need to know if any others have been badly treated. If you have, please raise your hand." To his horror, every hand was raised, even those of skilled tradesmen. Chipchase, a languid 6-footer with awful breath, picked up his coat and sneaked out. By the end of the week, 154 workers had spoken of the violence against them, others of their regular rapes, and one lady spoke of seeing Chipchase with his chums pouring pitch on a house and burning a family alive. The following day, Chip Chase was found dead, swinging from a tree overlooking the River Tyne. And on hearing this, Margaret Pharaoh said, "He is not going to escape me so lightly." The following morning, her body was found, floating in the river, washing up near Dunstan Staithes. Yet it was the Chip Chase house, a terraced house that to this day overlooks Lower Scotwood and the Scotwood Bridge. And from the moment she died, things in the house became messed up. Irene Chip Chase, the brute's wife, admitted to seeing dark shapes moving around her living room. Dark, man-shaped figures standing over her in her bedroom. On one occasion, a grey figure poured out of the darkness of a scullery and pushed her hard against the wall, clawing her face. Her children, all 5 of them, had seen ghostly figures and begged their mother to leave, without success. The screams, believed to be Margaret Pharaoh, continued through the night, as she plagues the man who raped her even after her death. The family moved out, and the next 8 new families all experienced the same crazed behavior of a woman determined to cause at least as much trouble. In 1991, it was one of the houses we used when breaking the world ghost hunt for the second time. And one of the girls who visited the house took recording devices with her, and this is the noise that they got. It was enough for the for sale signs to go up again the following morning.
Oh shit!